Welcome, scholars, to today's Explainer. We are jumping right in because I am absolutely thrilled to have you here as we embark on a really fascinating journey into the architecture of the digital world. You know, whenever you open your laptop or tap your smartphone to check the news, shop, or just connect with friends, you're interacting with a web page. But have you ever stopped to wonder what's actually happening behind the glass? Well, today we're going to look at the web page not as some chaotic jumble of code, but as a beautifully integrated instrument made of three core technologies working in absolute perfect concert. Here is our syllabus for today. We'll cover the integrated web instrument, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, browser processing code, and we'll wrap up with the modern web experience.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the integrated web instrument.
To help us really visualize these concepts today, we're going to lean on a familiar metaphor, the construction of a house. By the end of this explainer, you'll understand exactly how these technologies seamlessly build a fully functional digital home. Consider this quote carefully. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript work together as an integrated instrument to create modern, functional, and visually appealing websites. Think about it. A web page isn't just independent, isolated lines of code. It's a symphony. Just as an orchestra relies on the strings, the brass, and the percussion coming together to create music, a modern website absolutely relies on these three distinct languages fulfilling their specific roles to give us the digital experiences we rely on every single day.
Moving right along to part 2, HTML, the solid foundation.
So you literally can't build the roof until you pour the concrete, right? Let me introduce you to HTML, or Hypertext Markup Language. This is the absolute rock-solid foundation of a web page. Its entire job is to build and organize the raw data and information displayed to the user. Going back to our construction metaphor, HTML acts as the structural framing and the concrete foundation of our digital house. Without it, you basically have nothing to build upon. It provides the essential, undeniable structure of your site.
Now, what's kind of fascinating is how HTML actually pulls off this organization. It uses what we call tags to define the structure. This creates distinct spaces for things like headers, footers, and sidebars. I want you to think of these tags exactly like architectural blueprints. You know, a blueprint dictates where the living room goes, where the load-bearing walls are, where the front door sits. Well, HTML tags do the exact same thing for our raw data, telling the document where a paragraph begins, where an image sits, and where a link is placed.
Let's shift gears to part 3, CSS, styling the structure.
Okay, we have our framing in place, but a frame alone is hardly a finished home. Enter CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. This is a rule-based language used to format your HTML content, and its primary purpose in the web ecosystem is incredibly elegant. It completely separates the content, the HTML, from its presentation. I always like to remind my students that a web page without CSS is quite literally like a house without walls. Functional? Sure, but definitely drafty and highly unappealing to look at. CSS is what takes a dusty construction site and turns it into a welcoming home.
So the crucial takeaway here is that CSS strictly controls specific visual elements. It dictates the size, the color, the font, the backgrounds, the borders, and the precise placement of items on a page. This perfectly parallels the interior design, the exterior paint colors, and the siding of our constructed house. You use HTML to say, hey, here is a header, but you use CSS to say, make that header large, bold, and painted a vibrant shade of blue.
Which brings us to part 4, JavaScript, adding dynamic behavior.
Our digital house is structurally sound and beautifully painted, but it's entirely static. It doesn't actually do anything. This is where JavaScript enters the picture. JavaScript is a scripting language used to add interactivity and dynamic behavior to web pages. It's what allows a page to actually respond to user actions. To finish out our house metaphor, if HTML is the framing and CSS is the paint, JavaScript is the electricity, the plumbing, and the smart home interactivity. It's the garage door opening when you push a button, the thermostat adjusting, and the lights kicking on when you walk into a room. It makes the house truly functional. Through specific interactive actions, JavaScript transforms our rigid structure into a highly responsive environment. With it, developers can validate the input you type into a form, display requested information instantly on demand without even having to reload the page, or create complex, really engaging animations. It is the core engine of interaction that keeps the user actively engaged.
Let's look at part 5, browser processing code.
We have our blueprints, our paint, and our wiring. But who is actually assembling this digital house? Well, let me introduce you to your web browser, our ultimate construction contractor. Let's dive into the three-step assembly process the browser follows every single time you click a link. It connects the dots of how the HTML framing, CSS paint, and JavaScript electricity are installed in a very strict order. First up is loading. The browser requests the page and starts pulling in the document, which includes the HTML markup and CSS styles. Second is modeling. The browser acts just like a contractor reading the blueprint, creating an internal model of the document that contains all the HTML elements. And finally, third is execution. The browser loads and executes the JavaScript code absolutely last after the page is loaded. So it builds the frame, paints the walls, and then finally turns on the electricity.
And finally, Part 6, the modern web experience.
We've examined the tools and we've met the contractor. Now, I want you to contrast the old web with the modern web to see the ultimate result of this integrated construction. In the early days of the internet, the old web experience was, frankly, remarkably rigid. It was just static text and images. It was basically a neighborhood of identical, immovable cinderblock houses. But by combining HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, developers unlocked immense power. Today's modern web experience is totally dynamic. We now have seamless multimedia services, intricate 2D drawings rendered directly on the page, and complex application logic that legitimately rivals traditional desktop software. The humble house has evolved into a fully automated smart mansion.
And you know, this evolution is entirely driven by modern standards. Advancements like HTML5 act as unified building codes for our developers. HTML5 was specifically designed to facilitate much better, much tighter integration between our three core technologies. By standardizing exactly how HTML, CSS, and JavaScript communicate, HTML5 beautifully reduces the need to bolt external, third-party plugins onto our house just to get basic functionality, like playing a simple video. The integrated instrument plays perfectly in tune right out of the box.
So we have poured the HTML foundation, we've painted the CSS walls, wired the JavaScript electricity, and watched the browser construct our modern digital home. The synergy of this integrated instrument is exactly what makes the web such a powerful medium today. So my final provocative question for you today is this. Now that you know the blueprints of the web, what kind of digital structure will you build? Thank you so much for your attention today, scholars. I really hope this explainer has left you eager to take these foundational concepts and apply them in the real world. Keep learning, keep building, and I will see you in the next one.